I kept rewinding and replaying the tape, hoping each time that it would be the song it once was. But you can't go back. You never can. It felt like Kay blamed me for what had happened. I doubt that the venue would have burned down if I hadn't booked Niasa Bell. But other projects came along. The new season of Caledonian Gothic was taking up a lot of my focus. There were the incident reports to fill out, police interviews. We did ask what happened to the man, but they couldn't or wouldn't tell us anything. It changed things between me and Kay. But it was more than all of this. I hadn't mentioned that my dead wife had come back and was in our flat. How could I? She moves through the house as dust and scratched whispers, small scraped sigils of fingerprints in the mirror and across the things we once shared. I'm not sure if Kay saw or heard or sensed the things that I did, but something had fundamentally soured. I didn't know if the haunting had changed my behaviour or was affecting Kay too, but something was wrong. I wanted to do something nice for us, to try to make the peace. I saw it as an adventure, or some experience we'd talk about for years afterwards. But Kay was not enjoying herself. It was too cold, too dark, the food was too bland, the old man who acted as sole cook, host, waiter and entertainment was creepy. I suppose she had a point. It didn't help that we were the only customers. I hadn't anticipated that, but tried to keep things upbeat and chatty. I was so tired of all of this. They didn't advertise, and its bookings were by appointment only. I'd only had their phone number because the parents of a friend had kept it from when the owner had had more of a proper restaurant. I'd called 3 different times before I finally got through, and the man's soft rasping of a thick accent had left me unsure if this was a prank. I had passed the once grand building under the railway bridge loads of times, and had just assumed that it was an abandoned husk, left only because of conservation or heritage rules about historic buildings. Being so close to the Palace of Holyrood, you could easily think that it was once a guardsman's house or residency for royal visitors. The windows had been barred and the door thick with dust and graffiti, so I was honestly surprised when it opened, sometime after I'd knocked, after the sound of several bolts and chains being withdrawn. Kay immediately bundled herself in crossed arms. There had been no need of a jacket on her way here. It was dark inside and so cold that our breath came out in clouds, despite the mild spring day. It was impossible to tell how big it was. The only light was the candles at the solitary table set with an ancient frilled tablecloth, slightly chipped plates and mismatched cutlery. This wasn't high dining, but I always thought that the best non-Western food was found in places that hadn't done anything about decor or atmosphere. Besides, how often did you get to step inside such a prominent and mysterious building? There was no menu, no choice of dishes. The hunched man, once he had seated us, stumbled off into the gloom to get our first course. It was a thin, lukewarm garlic and parsley soup whose predominant flavour was of white pepper. The bread served with it seemed stale and dried when we touched the crust, but it actually held a lusciously light and fluffy crumb. While we ate, the owner sat with us. He pulled a chair from what was surely a neighbouring table, but in the thick darkness, it seemed like he had just conjured it up. His thick accent, told with soft, phlegmy rasps, meant that I couldn't even tell if he was speaking English. The pace in his animated hands suggested it was a story. He certainly didn't respond or even acknowledge any of my attempted questions about the building or the restaurant. When we finally pushed our bowls away, Kay's mostly untouched, he stopped abruptly and cleared the table, disappearing once more. We sat in silence while we waited. I made a quip, hoping that Kay might crack even a small smile, a small glimmer of spark between us. But there was nothing except shivering breaths and the distant clatter of pots and knives. We hadn't spoken properly in weeks. I wished we could. I wasn't sure if she was just overworked or if she felt the same pangs as I did. I didn't know if I felt disconnected from her so much because of her mood, or if her mood was caused by my feelings of discontent. The wine, served in mugs with faded labyrinthine floral designs, was so cold that I couldn't even taste it. The next course was a pork knuckle stew, dished onto a thick mash of potatoes and butters, served with a greening pickled cabbage. My serving seemed to be mostly bay leaves, onto which clung thick white pustules of pork fat. He did not ask if we enjoyed the food or wanted anything, he just sat down with us again. Rather than a story, he brought out an instrument. It was unlike anything I'd seen, something between a vertical accordion and hurdy-gurdy. He strained to pump the bellows and was audibly breathless with the exertion. But rather than any sort of blown tone, it produced a clattering percussion, like the sounds of distant hooves or tapping and scratching on stone. In this rhythm, almost tapping into my heartbeat, I could sense a happier dance. It came as a sort of brief glimpse of contented frolics that I could be having. It had no such effect on Kay, who winced and I thought would have covered her ears if she wasn't using her limbs to wrap her shivering body. I was too fascinated by the instrument to even mind the meal. I tried to follow the path of sound from the awkward squeeze box through its pipes and reeds to determine how it made its weird song. Protruding from the far end were 3 sheer white stubby flutes that seemed to produce the sound. I watched as he occasionally swapped these out for, to my eyes, identical ones, which then changed the layers of drum-like clatterings. I asked him what instrument this was, and he shot such an offended glare at me, redoubling his heaving at the instrument. He started to sing. His voice was unsteady in the tune, but took upon this melancholic wail of a melody with such passion and fury that I could feel Kay recoil in fright. I did try to enjoy this archaic song, having heard nothing of its like. He played until long after we had cleared our plates as best we could. It wasn't until the song had reached its spitting climax that he shuffled off to return the instrument before clearing the table, his eyes cast resolutely downwards. I asked if there was a bathroom I could use. Kay shook her head slightly and mouthed, "Please don't," at me, casting her eyes at the old man looming over us. I knew she was uncomfortable, but this discomfort was no different to the new constant of our relationship. I couldn't wait. I wouldn't be far away. "Lights out. You use torch," the man said, and pointed me in a direction down what must have been the other side of the dining room. He motioned to our table where a small mag-light torch was next to the candle. I hadn't noticed that before, which was odd considering how few other places there were to look. Even with the torch's flickering light, I felt my way past several other tables, as if this place would host huge gatherings. I caught glimpses of an ornate fireplace and stuffed bears' heads mounted on the wall, gathering cobwebs. The door's plaque read "Toilet," as well as a word in a script that I couldn't recognise. Through this door was a better-lit hallway which passed by the kitchen. I was sure I'd heard him do the preparation from the other end of the main room. Looking in, I saw a few fridges and large pots perched on hot plates. In the corner, on the floor, was a small mattress with dishevelled sheets. Overlooking this makeshift bed was a small TV showing a news channel that was made impossible to understand by the language and the garbling waves of static and scan lines that hissed over the image. The toilet was just past this, small and cramped, and I didn't dare use the sliver of soap that was precariously balanced on the side of the stained sink. I didn't want to dally too long, as I knew she'd had enough and wanted to go home. But there was an open case just inside the kitchen door. I had to have a quick look. Set into the black velvet lining were 6 of the bone-white flutes that I'd seen him use in his contraption. I'd expected a reed, but they were hollow, the aperture too wide and empty to have made any sound at all. They were warm to the touch, which I guessed was because playing them must have made a bit of heat somehow. Leaving the instrument and returning to the table, Kay looked ready to leave, despite the small squares of flaky beetroot cake and blackened coffee laid out. I tried to gulp back the espresso, but it was so bitter that I almost choked when I asked, "How much do we owe you?" I'd brought cash, as I assumed they didn't take cards. "It's okay, you pay already," he said. I was going to protest and insist that we hadn't, but I took her glared hint and shambled through the darkness to the door. I hadn't appreciated the extent to which we'd been locked in as I watched him try different keys to undo all of the locks on the big wooden front door. Outside, it was now raining, but at least it was bright and familiar. I did make a few light-hearted comments about how weird it had all been, but other than those bursts of desperate attempts at conversation, the taxi ride home was quiet and glum. She had to go to work the next day, and I relished the thought of having the place to myself to play video games without argument. Later on, when I needed to go for a walk to clear my head, reaching into my jacket pocket, I found one of the flutes. I was sure I'd put it back in its case. A stab of guilt froze me. Had I stolen a piece of some rare and priceless instrument? I'd need to phone the restaurant to apologise and arrange to return it. But I did take the opportunity to study it further. There were 3 small finger holes, but no indication of how they made any sound. It was made from a single piece of something. I tried not to think too hard about that, as I kept coming back to the idea that it had been carved out of bone. It still felt warm to the touch, even a day after it had last been played. I'm not quite sure what made me think it was a good idea, but there was no other investigation of its workings that I could do. I put it to my lips and gave a tentative blow. The sound that came out was not as strong as when it was plugged into the instrument, but it still gave out a gently percussive sound, somewhere between the pitter-patter of rain and soft brushed snare drums. I kept blowing, keen to understand how the strength and rhythm of my breath changed the music it made. As I listened, I again became so overwhelmingly content and very sleepy. I hadn't been sleeping much lately, so the way that my thoughts emptied so quickly of anxiety and overthinking was a revelation. I felt like a nap, but as soon as I put the flute away, I no longer felt the pull of exhaustion. Instead, worry and guilt came crashing back in. I decided to try something. I booted up Reaper and quickly recorded 10 minutes of me playing the flute into the computer. Time drifted away. With some exertion to move and set up the playback, I put the recording on a loop and felt the same all-encompassing and soothing lull take me. Maybe I dreamed, but I don't remember. I just felt so happy and clear. I slept all that night and through most of the next day. I only woke up because my laptop had rebooted to install some update. Kay had left a note on the bedside table saying that she'd hoped we could have done something together today, but since I'd decided to laze about, she'd gone to the library to study. I'm not sure if we would have done something happily together if I'd been up. Although I had woken feeling better rested than I had done in months, the passive-aggressive letter panged me with immediate anxiety and frustration that only intensified during a long shower in which everything I wanted to say, every argument I thought we might have, played out in vivid, loud detail. Things hadn't been great before, but they had taken a considerable downturn when I tried to explain why I was so focused on researching the Isabel. I worried she thought I was cheating on her, but it wasn't like that. I dare not tell her that I felt my dead wife's presence so strongly since that gig. I just wanted to go back to sleep. I hit play on the recording and sank almost immediately into peacefulness. It was harder to wake up this time, but the deep rest was having to contend with her clattering about the room, sighing loudly. I suppose you're going to sleep all of today as well? I was utterly parched and my water bottle had been drained sometime during my sleep. You can get your water yourself, she snapped and stomped off. I knew she could be caring and considerate, but I guess all of that had now expired between us. I did get up, but all I could think of was going back to bed, of sleep. She didn't look up from the sofa, doing her Duolingo course, while I stood over the kitchen sink and drained 3 glasses of water in quick succession, the cool liquid dribbling over my chin and down my t-shirt. "Sorry," I said. "Do you want to go out today? Get lunch?" "It's too late," she muttered in between repeating German phrases into the app. I didn't want to argue. I didn't know how to end this. I opened my mouth to say I was going back to bed, and thought better of it. I took the shopping list from the fridge door and told her I was going to go out and take care of that for the week. She muttered a small "fine," but maybe that was just her practicing her consonants and possessives. Getting dressed, I had an idea. I hooked my computer up to the Bluetooth speakers in the living room and piped the recording through there. She didn't immediately scream at me, so I left it on loop while I gathered my stuff and got sorted to go out. She was asleep when I came back through. Poor thing, she hadn't been sleeping well either. We were both too tired to think straight. I left her sleeping when I went out shopping, having made sure that the Bluetooth speaker was plugged in lest it run down. She was still asleep when I came back. I thought it best to leave her be. She'd been so overworked. I hoped she might feel better after a long, peaceful sleep. She slept through the next day, muttering softly through her sleep. Listening to her, it seemed to be the same strange foreign story we'd been told in the restaurant. She was always better at languages. Maybe she'd understood it. Having slept for so long, I felt a lot more energetic and enthusiastic, so went out and caught up on work, on seeing friends and on projects, while she slept deeply on her sofa. The recording still played. I left her sleeping. I kept the flute on me. I told myself that it was to post back through the door if I was ever passing, but I never went anywhere near there. I'd occasionally attempt playing it while she slept. The tones and rhythms it played seemed to react and interweave with the recording. I didn't know how much I could actually influence or play it, rather than just give it breath. She slept while I played her lullabies. Until, one morning, she was gone. The clothes she'd been sleeping in were still laid out in position, and nothing else had moved in the house, so I didn't know where she was. The house felt calm and still. Wasn't this what I wanted? But without her there, the tiredness suddenly took me again. It was a tremendous effort even to unplug the speaker before I collapsed. I slept until it loudly alerted "low battery" before switching off. I knew what I had to do. I needed to play the flute song for someone else. It was hard to package it up and release it on Bandcamp without listening to it, but Dark Ambient has its audience. I knew it had been downloaded and listened to when the tiredness left me. I kept the flute. I knew I'd know when I'd need to play it again. Kay did not come back, but the house did not feel empty or quiet. It was as if the pipe's song lingered in distant, indistinct echoes. More than the sense that she was here, I could hear the shuffle of slippers on the carpet, snatched scents of gentle, cucumbery perfume. These were not Kay's footsteps or smell, nor did this presence feel miserable or confrontational. The dead woman in my house felt slightly more present now. My wife was finding her way back from death. Caledonian Gothic presents 6 songs folk historians don't want you to hear. This melody will shock you. Written and produced by Maloney. Sound design and audio mix by Gareth. theme tune by Amber Devereux of Tin Can Audio. Also featuring the voices of Rhiannon Grist, Kim Allison, Josh Holton, Sandra Spighel, Bram Gieben, and Gavin Inglis. Broadcast signal intrusion by Alistair Rennie. Original development was done with funding and support from Creative Scotland and Playwrights Studio Scotland. See the show notes for further info, including links to transcripts. Please do like, share, review, and let us know what you thought. Completely and proudly human-made. Thank you for listening.